Everyone, I hope everybody's keeping well. So it's been a very interesting weekend here in Ireland, particularly with Eamon Ryan, the Minister for Transport and the Environment, head of the Green Party, obviously, in the government's coalition, I suppose, power. He and again, it's the first time ever in 2 years, nearly, I've heard this, that apparently he tested positive in one PCR test, which we all know PCR tests, they're not accurate. We have to be honest with ourselves. They don't really work, to be totally honest. They don't really work. They don't really tell you much. And again, the media having their mouth down over it, people asking questions about it. But they're very reasonable questions to ask. If he tests positive the day beforehand and he says it's COVID or whatever, then the next day has a PCR test. And again, I remember young people having to self isolate because they got a positive test. And people have a self-isolate because they got a positive test. There was no such thing as a second. We're not going to give you a second. We're not going to give you anything. You just have to self-isolate. That's the end of it. No debate, no argument about it. Just self-isolate. Go away. Eamon Ryan apparently the next day had a test and it was negative. So somebody please tell me. And again, they're saying this mistake. This is the question I'm asking. Again, the media and particularly social media now. I was posting on my community post about Eamon Ryan. They wouldn't let me post, so it's censorship. They're trying to censor people for asking questions. Because I was asking, is Eamon Ryan, should he be going to Glasgow? Because he says, if people are test positive or whatever, they should self-isolate anyway. And that's what the government have been saying. Even though, act like you have the virus. That's what they used to say. Act like you have the virus. Self-isolate if you go for a PCR test or whatever. Even though it comes back negative, they even said, I remember even government advertisements saying to isolate. And again, Eamon Ryan's off to Glasgow. Not a fucking bother to him. He just doesn't give a damn. And the same with the rest of the government. You think they will come out and clarify and say to people, they can get 2 PCR tests. And I can't tell you the amount of people I've seen taking off work. And even school, I do remember somebody that was doing their leaving cert and they happened to go for a PCR test because the school recommended for them to go to a PCR test. And they happened to test positive. They had to miss their leaving cert and do it on a later date. And that's what happened. And I do remember that. That was down the country. That happened. And again, there was no such thing as a second test. We're going to offer you a second test. And Eamon Ryan gets a second test and he's just allowed to go free and wander around the place. Again, one rule for D, another rule for the other. Because if that was you or me, the only members of the public, we wouldn't be allowed to go. And again, the media hate it. Because again, social media, YouTube nearly probably took a fit when I asked, is the PCR tests any good? Are they any good? Did they tell things? Oh, like take for example, the HSE hasn't got back to me on this point. I wrote an email to them. I haven't got back to me. Probably won't answer me. I know them. But it's Eamon Ryan's case is classified as the other cases, the 3,000 whatever cases. And is this happening very regularly to keep the numbers up? And we have to ask genuine questions to keep the numbers up. Because we all know the Irish government have a big interest. Members of Dáil Éireann have a big interest in Shannon Éireann and too have big interest in PCR forms. And it costs a lot of money. It costs the state a fortune for the PCR test compared to antigen tests and things like that. It's more profitable. I suppose the politicians get it back in return for the PCR tests. Because again, because they have interests. Again, other countries have been using antigen testing for long before us, and now randomly we're just deciding to use it. But they're still going with the PCR test, even though, again, we have to ask sensible questions. If Eamon Ryan's test tested positive, we all knew that, and the media won't clarify. The media are afraid to answer questions, start running into them household as soon as they can, because they won't answer the question, and they won't answer it. And social media, they're trying their best, social media companies, from asking you, members of the public, me and you, asking questions of our authority, who we voted in, on what they're doing and why they're going to Glasgow. And another thing, Eamon Ryan's always shouting on about travel and things like that, pollution and things like that. Why, again, the majority of the time, if I have to go somewhere and if I can do it online, I do it online because it's that easier. It's not easier than having to wander around half the country to go to meetings or whatever. And I'm sure people agree it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier. You don't have to do anything. You can talk here, and it's simple. It's not because of pollution around it. I don't want to pollute the atmosphere around it. But there's no reason for me to go unless unless my physical presence is needed somewhere. Then I would go. But so the majority of times I don't have to go because I can talk. I can get my points still across from being on the other side of Cavan talking about things. It doesn't really make a difference if I turn up, if I'm there in person or I'm on the internet talking to people. But again, Eamon Ryan seems to forgot about that because he's travelling over in the plane. He's not swimming over to Glasgow. If he was, then we would be like, fair enough. Then he's all about the environment. He actually cares, and he's going over swimming to Glasgow. And fair enough, I would say that's actually a fair point. I listen to Eamon Ryan then, but again, Eamon Ryan has lost all credibility. Again, it's just worried that older people at the moment are probably freezing to death in their houses because it's going to be cold winter. We have to be honest with ourselves. It's going to be cold winter. And Eamon Ryan is there. They're putting up fossil fuel. They're putting up everything. And again, Ireland has every country has a role to play in reducing carbon emissions and things like that. But China and the big countries have a bigger role to play, obviously because they have a bigger population, bigger industry. Ireland is feck all. A few people lighting the fire. Again, please explain how we're polluting the whole world. Please explain, and maybe a few cows in the world. Please explain compared to China of something like 1 billion people. And big factories pumping out plastic 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And child labour. Again, apparently we're not home when that's happening, the United Nations. And Ireland's the biggest danger to society. And then with the cows farting, the absolute dangerous Ireland producing with cows farting, we're going to have to kill them all. That's more or less what they're saying. Which is nonsensical because let's be honest, in Brazil they have farms and it's a bigger farming industry now in Brazil nearly, and we're buying beef and things like that from Brazil. It doesn't no logic at all in it. But again, this is the thing. Social media needs to cop on a bit, particularly the social media companies. They need to cop on a bit. They really do need to cop on. Especially when I'm asking genuine questions about the PCO test and things like that. And I'm asking genuine questions, challenging Eamon Ryan to why he doesn't have to self-isolate. Because if that was you or me, I wouldn't go for a PCO test. To be totally honest, I never did. I was told once before to go for a PCO test, never went, never bothered. There was no need because I wasn't sick. I didn't feel sick, and there was no need. If I would know if I had a virus or something. Could tell. I'm sure you could tell if you had a virus or something. I don't think you need a test to be honest to tell you that you're sick. I don't believe in that, to be totally honest, because I'm sure you can tell. Like again, if we have a flu or anything, you can tell straight away. You're like, I'll have one of the nose, I have the width, the vomit, whatever. Doesn't make any sense. But again, this is Ireland and 2020 wouldn't nothing make sense. But Eamon Ryan needs, and the HSC too, and Eamon Ryan shouldn't be going over there for a step. He should be packing his bags and leaving. Because many Irish citizens had to isolate, abandon their work, abandon their lives for a few days to isolate in their houses. Even though, again, if they got a positive case, they wouldn't offer the second one. This is the point I'm making. That people had to abandon their lives and Eamon Ryan the next day can just wander off. And get basically, and again, there's no clarification, and the media is more or less saying to us, you don't need to know. It's on a need to know basis. You don't need to know. The Irish public doesn't need to know anything. They should just sit down and shut up. That's what we like the Irish people to do. Just sit down. Whether it be totally honest, would like us to shit because they talk so much shit. The media, you couldn't produce as much shit as the media produces. In this country, they don't talk any logic. They don't talk any sense. They're just towing the government's line. Whatever the government says, they just tow it. To defend him, and the media went out of the way to defend him and Ryan. Never asked one question, to just defend it. Even though it's undefensible. It's undefensible what he done. And no explanation, just defend. And I will talk about that later on, about Leo being shown up in front of the whole world. And the media just lost the marbles, literally lost the whole marbles. But anyway, take care everybody, let me know what you think and bye.